Welcome to Behavioral Grooves, the podcast that explores story, science, and secrets from the world's brightest thought leaders for the curious at heart. I'm Kurt Nelson.
And I'm Tim Houlihan. We investigate the aspects of behavioral science that will improve your well-being, your relationships, and your organization by helping you find your groove.
Okay, Tim. Do you remember that quote from Groucho Marx, the one that said, "Please accept my resignation from the club. I don't want to belong to any club that will accept me as a member"?
I do. I'm a big Groucho Marx fan, and I do remember that. Yeah.
Okay. So would you accept a membership from a club that would have you if it was a secret club?
Well, I'm not sure that would really make a difference. Would it?
I don't know, but wouldn't it be cool to be a member of a secret society, one that's highly exclusive and only a select few get in?
Well, of course it would. You know, it's got the psychological pull of being a secret club, and that's pretty compelling.
All right, agreed. And our guest today talks about that secret society pull.
Yeah, that's right. This is Michael F. Schein's second appearance on Behavioral Grooves, and he talks about his adventure in applying one of the lessons from his first book, the Hype Handbook, in forming a secret club.
It is a really interesting subject, and I kind of wish I could be part of that club. I'd love to know what they talk about in that club. That'd be pretty cool to know.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I'd love to tell you about it, but, you know, since you're not a member, I can't.
Damn it, I knew you were a member. I knew.
No. No, Mike, you know, Mike made it pretty clear he's not going to invite his buddies.
Yeah, not going to invite either of us. I know. We're just not worthy of the secret society club that he has. All right. So, listeners, sit back, grab a glass of your favorite secret society brew, and enter our very secretive discussion with Michael F. Schein.
Michael F. Schein, welcome back to Behavioral Grooves.
Thank you. I am very happy to be here.
It's great to have you here. Okay, so man, it's been a while since we've been in touch. What's going on?
A lot. I'm not sure how far into the cataclysmic world global pandemic we were, but I think it was on the early half of that.
Yeah,
last time we talked. Yeah. And knock on wood, we seem to be emerging, which is evidenced by the fact that I have a regular, good old fashioned cold right now.
It's not COVID.
Yeah, it is not COVID.
Nice.
It's just a cold, the way I used to get colds, and it's awful, but it's normal.
But I think the thing with like colds these days or anything like that is like all of a sudden it's like, oh, I got COVID, I got to go get tested. It's like we have this fear that is overhanging every time we get sick now. Yeah. I get a headache and I go, oh no, what's going on? Which probably is not a totally bad thing to have, but it kind of makes us a little bit more cautious and a little bit more concerned about these minor illnesses that we're not passing them along, hopefully as much. But
well, it's funny about that, and then I'm sure we don't want to talk about epidemiology the whole time, but I used to get a lot of colds, and I realized I think I had a lot of bad habits, like chewing my nails and things like that. And I think just being careful and wearing masks, I didn't get a lot of colds. And now I got this cold, and like 4 other people I know have regular colds. And I think some of the bad habits are coming back. I'm not really wearing a mask a lot. I'm just going out and about and not thinking about where I'm sitting or standing or inside or outside. So
we're not washing our hands nearly as much as we did that 20 ABC song and doing all that stuff that we did. Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, we don't want to talk about colds and germs and other things. Exactly. So what else have you been up to?
But so, yeah, I mean, the reason I was on the show the first time is because I had just put out the Hype Handbook. It had just been published with McGraw-Hill, and I was promoting it, so I was going around to a bunch of shows. And the good news is the book got attention, in fact, just recently, because I got a decent advance for the book, I got my first check royalty check deposited into my account. So for people who don't know how that works, you have to earn out your advance.
Right. There's no free money in this.
It was a $20 check, which is nothing, but it was very exciting because it meant that now I'm going to start getting royalty checks.
It's like when I got my first check from Spotify for $1. I think it was $1.02 actually.
Yeah.
That was like, okay, it's working to a very small degree, but exactly. Congratulations. Okay.
So that was cool. So anyway, so what happened was it changed my entire professional life and business. So for all intents and purposes, Microfame Media, the company that I own, was a marketing agency. Even though we did things our own way, and we can talk about what that is if it's relevant. People didn't know what hype is, right? You know, this concept that I call hype, except as a negative thing. So when people came to us, I would be the marketing agency. And that meant, even though we did things in our benevolently mischievous way, we ran social media campaigns. We ran essentially PR campaigns. All this. Yeah, I mean, that had a lot of benefits. It you know, the problem is there's this weird psychology that happens. And I would be the same way if I were a client, I think. But when you hire a company, especially at a premium, and you say, go handle my marketing, there's this subconscious thing that kicks in where you sort of disassociate yourself from the process. You sort of wave a magic wand, even if you don't mean to. And it used to make for a lot of difficult conversations with clients because, you know, we would, for example, position someone in a certain contrarian way, book a bunch of podcast interviews for them, and they would show up, even though they hired us to be contrarian, they would show up their old outside the box thinking, synergy, win-win solution, corporate self, right? and so we would always have to have these conversations, and it was really challenging. And we would get good results, but it meant that I had to have a very big team for, you know, and a lot of hard conversations. So what happened with the book was people started to understand this concept of hype. Not that I invented the word, but I redefined it a little bit in the business world anyway, as activities that generated emotion and attention in this sort of mass psychology oriented way that can be done for good.
Yeah, it's a really positive thing, not just this negative thing that culturally we tend to associate with it.
Yeah, exactly right. So people started to call me up and say, hey, we need some of this hype thing instead of marketing. So I reinvented the company to be where I walk people through the teams. It's like an intensive program where we dig into each hype principle and sort of bake it into their DNA. And then we build experiments based on that hype principle. And we come up with it. We give the customized tools. We dissect them. We iterate them. But the client goes out into the world and puts one foot in front of the other to do the experiment. Usually a small experiment because you don't want to fall on your face publicly. The craziest thing happened, though. The results are better. We've had a viral a viral TikTok star. We had a conference created on our principles that was very, very successful. That had big, you know, Chris Doe was there, the guy who did The Future. So it's just funny how when people have a little bit of skin in the game, they take the concepts and just run with them and you get a better result. So that's been a really cool thing. So the business has changed a lot and I'm loving it. I love what we do now.
There's a part of that that's like, it's an endowment effect. This idea that because it's mine, the IKEA effect, as we talk about, right? I'm having to make this. Yeah, you've given me the directions. You've pointed me in the right way, but because I've had to put labor into it, I value that much more. And I think, 100%. As you said, the results come as a result of having that hands-on component within there. So that's really cool.
I would encourage anyone who has a business where you're not selling a physical product to think of ways where you can use that endowment effect. And that doesn't mean, I mean, everything is like a river. On one bank is do it yourself, a video course. And on the other bank is you say jump and we say how high. But I would encourage people to challenge that idea of under promise, over deliver. We all say that that's what you're supposed to do. But in the most extreme examples, I would have clients, because we used to over deliver anything they said we would do. They would give people at my company assignments. They would tell them to write memos and give them due dates completely out of scope. And instead of feeling, when I pushed back, it wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm pushing a little bit, you've been doing a lot for me. It's like, how dare you not do this thing that's become the new norm?
Wow.
We get you think about how horrible the pandemic felt in the beginning. And then we kind of got used to it. It was like low grade misery, but you accommodate everything. So I would challenge people to just accept that idea. You should always give the best possible service within what you're doing and become indispensable. But just running and jumping for clients usually has the opposite result. And it doesn't usually help the client, because sometimes they give you assignments that are completely useless for what you're trying to get to, which is human nature.
And I'm laughing because I'm like going, oh, this is my life. There you go. That's my life.
It's most people's lives in the kind of work that we all do.
Okay, so you've got a new project, Mike. You've got something new that you're working on that we want to hear about. We want to share with our listeners.
So, and this is what I reached out to you about, and you thought it was cool, so you graciously
Yes, we did. Okay, yes.
But we think it's secret, so that's kind of the cool thing.
Yeah. So the show's over. We can't talk about it. That's just speed show. Yeah. So one thing to keep in mind is that I'm always doing experiments, right? I mean, that's what I lead my clients to do. I mean, there are mass psychology principles, behavioral principles that you guys discuss and the principles I discuss. But ultimately, you don't know what form those are going to work in. So I'm always doing experiments, and most of them don't work. And a lot of times they're experiments to promote our business, right? And then we use the results to help clients. So I had a chapter in the book called Create Your Own Secret Society, Build Your Own Secret Society. And I used the term in a very tongue-in-cheek way. It was really a function of what I would call a sort of nuclear networking that hype artists do. But I didn't really mean a real secret society. But after the book came out, I got interested. I started thinking, why did I choose that term?
Right.
And why are so many people fascinated by secret societies? Why did the Da Vinci Code, well, really, it's ilk, the ones that came after it about the Freemasons, why did they sell millions upon millions of books? So I started to research it. And what I found was so fascinating was, we tend to think that the secrets that these secret societies like the Freemasons and all of these things, the Illuminati, are the important thing. It turns out it's the secrecy that's the important thing. So we actually know what the secrets of the Freemasons are, because the Inquisition found the Freemasons very threatening, in the 1700s, when they could still torture people, and they did. So they tortured the secrets out of people and documented them, and they're available. If you're a Freemason, you promise you wear an apron, you kneel down on a checkerboard floor, you promise in very ritualized language to cut your tongue out and slice your throat if you tell the secret. And the secret is something like, be good to your fellow man.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you? The point of the secrecy is the secrecy. We all join these mastermind groups and these networking groups, and we all say that we're delivering value and we do it because we like to do it. But really, it's part of our jobs. We do it because we think we should. We might enjoy it more than looking at spreadsheets, but it's not something we would do with our free time, But people used to join these groups and spend all their free time at them, and a lot of business got done. The reason people found them threatening was because a Freemason will do anything for a Freemason. And it's about the secrecy. It's about the ritual. It's about the exalted language. So what I did as an experiment was I have a mailing list called the Hype Book Club, which has a lot of people on it. And because it has a lot of people on it, some of the people, not the majority, very much the minority, are people maybe you would have heard of, people who are
famous,
or at least micro famous, like for example, there's a big producer of properties that you've heard of on the list, right? So, you wouldn't know his name, but you would know what he created. So I said, well, what if I created a well-designed email that was really ornate and had really exalted language? And, I called it the ludic circle, because Latin is always very good for these sorts of things. And it just means the play circle or the magic circle. And I sort of invited a very small number of these people to join a new ludic circle, a secret society. And I didn't expect anything to come of it. I never do until it does. But I got a really good reaction. I mean, people were really enticed. So I started playing with it. And I've really stuck to the idea. The idea is I am not just inviting people because they're my friends. I still hold networking dinners with really successful people. These people are not in the secret society. Many people have asked me to be in it. I don't do it unless it's a good fit for the group. Even really successful, awesome people that I've helped and they've helped. And
like us, like we haven't been invited to your secret society. You know, I'm feeling kind of left out. I'm feeling like, hey, what did we do wrong? Come on.
And you may one day and you may not. My former partner in Access to Anyone, a podcast that I hosted, he still runs it, hasn't been invited. And I must make 20 introductions to him a year. You know, he's a close personal friend, right?
So we could beg, but that still wouldn't get us invited.
But Tim, you might be invited and I don't know it. And because it's
secret,
you can't tell me. Yeah,
you'll never know.
Or vice versa. Who knows?
So on one of the other podcasts, a guy who interviewed me, this guy O'Brien McMahon, I think, if it wasn't him, forgive me. But he told me about a group I had never heard of, and they're called the Seven at the University of Virginia. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
It's like a fraternal organization, like a fraternity, but not really. There's 7 people at any given time in this group.
Wow.
And no one knows who's in it. They invite you when they're there by putting this letter in a statue of Thomas Jefferson, the founder. And the only time people find out about it is when you die. They deliver a flower arrangement in the shape of a 7 and ring a bell at your funeral.
That is exotic.
Like,
wow.
That's what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? Like, who doesn't want to be in that, right?
So are you working on...
Because I don't want to dilute it. I don't want to make it where, but you know, Kurt and Tim are so awesome. They're so successful. They've helped me out so much. I should let them in. And then my partner, I should let him in. And what about my accountant? You know, he saved me hundreds of thousands of dollars. He really has. I mean, I wouldn't be in business without him. He should probably be in it. And before long, you've got a networking group, right? I'm experimenting with something different. And it turns out business gets done. That's not the point. The point is for it to prompt these sorts of questions, to create an air of mystery and to have fun as part of the event. And then if business gets done, business gets done. So it's been cool. I don't even call it a project. It's just a thing I'm playing with right now.
So in your book, you talked about having, you know, this is one of the things that you could do. You could start your own secret society. Do you, now having done this, are you doubling down on that? Do you think that really many organizations could be doing this to have not just business benefit, but all these other factors that you're talking about?
I always think it's really important to think about underlying forces versus tactics, right?
Okay.
So, you know, there's a book called Launch. I'm trying to think of who the guy who wrote it was. Yeah, Jeff Walker. It's about a certain way of doing digital marketing. And on the face of it, it's a great book. It was written at this point, probably 10, 15 years ago. And it gives you a recipe for setting up sales funnels, massaging people with content, and then ultimately getting them to buy with you. And Jeff Walker went from nothing to a millionaire. And I know people who have followed the process early on and did the same. But if you tried it now and just followed the recipe, you're not going to, it's going to do nothing for you. That stuff has become so well known. That ticking down counter clock that you always see that creates false scarcity, a certain type of email sequence that goes out. A better way to read that book, I believe, would be to say, what is it that Jeff Walker understood about how people make buying decisions that caused him to inherently build that system? He didn't find it in a recipe. So where people go wrong is they see that XYZ person in their industry created a Substack and used Tumblr to promote the Substack newsletter and got a diehard following through Tumblr for the Substack and then converted the Substack into payments. So they do the exact same thing and they're boggled that it doesn't work. And what you want to say to yourself is, what were they doing on Tumblr? What were they tapping into?
Right.
Why Substack? And why, what was it about that newsletter and creating that pay gate that worked? So I don't know that I would just follow it and say, create a secret society with Latin in the headline, but I think looking at what psychological dynamics are at play, which people have done for years. I mean, look at a Mormon temple, right? Like when they build a Mormon temple, there's a small period of time before they consecrate it where anyone can come in. And after that, only, members of the church can come in. And people will travel from 10 states around to go into this building that I can assure you, I'm not sure, but I'm 99.9% sure nothing happens to change the physical structure of the temple once it's consecrated. It probably looks the same afterwards. Yeah.
I was all excited because, groove in Latin is sulcus sinus, if I pronounced that correctly. And so
sinus.
I thought we could.
Like a groove in your nose.
Yeah, grooving in your nose. There you go. I think we could have a whole, groove subculture secret society. There we go. Anyway.
With a Latin
I'm not saying don't do it. I mean, I think there's value. I think it's just a function of understanding why you do anything.
Yeah, I think that's a big piece across any type of piece. And the example that you brought up, the idea of like focusing in on the Substack and the method of getting out there, is that tactical approach is not one that is going to lead to success in most instances. It is really understanding the strategy behind it and what is going to be driving that strategy for you as an organization. And I think you bring that point really clear. And so that's very true.
Well,
and I would say that sometimes you'll find that the tactic is the right tactic, but you just like a lot of people have used the launch system to make a lot of money, but you have to ask yourself, why is it a good fit for my business? How do I make it our own? And that sort of thing.
It's context. I mean, context is so much a part of it. I mean, I go back to the Alice Cooper stunt in Piccadilly Square.
Right.
What a great thing to do in that context. It wouldn't have, it would be silly to do again. To doing it today, so what?
Or if you were Elton John, or if you were a different,
different performer.
It had to fit with Alice Cooper's persona, as well as, the time and everything else that made that work. And those are the things that you need to take into consideration.
It's such a great point, right? If you look at the context, for people who don't know this stunt, Alice Cooper, they had a billboard of him naked breakdown in Piccadilly Square to outrage parents. And we tend to think that these things are constant, right? But there was a generation gap at that point. I mean, that was not every generation. There have been generations where kids wanted to be like their parents, right? That wasn't a unique thing. People always want to pull away a little, but this was a generation gap. Parents and kids were in two different universes. Whereas today, I read a story, I've mentioned this before, but I was a big fan of kind of like punk music and stuff. And so this band, the Dickies, who was a punk band from the 70s, played at some conference, and they're like old men at this point. And they got up and they did their punk rock thing where they were shouting obnoxious, probably deeply offensive on, put in sexism, homophobia, racism, whatever other thing. But the idea in the punk days was we didn't really mean that stuff. We're just trying to be outrageous for the sake of being outrageous. Right. So they did that on stage. And a young person, which they are not, held up a sign talking about how demeaning and offensive they were to women. And the guy freaked out and started yelling at her. And who won that argument? The kids didn't become Dickies fans.
No.
My 12-year-old daughter, I had on my wall when I was 12 years old, and this is almost embarrassing, but a picture of a woman in a bikini on a sports car and an Iron Maiden poster with a guy holding a gun, And my daughter has like prison reform posters and, women's rights posters. I mean, that's who they are. So to apply that generation gap thing to them doesn't work. Right?
Not at all.
Context is everything.
Yeah. So what's next? What's next for Michael F. Schein?
Gosh, could use a vacation at some point.
Oh, come on. You're not a relaxing. You're not going to take a vacation.
I'm pretty good at relaxing, honestly. You would be surprised, but I don't do it too much. No, I mean, I have a couple of things that I'm really focused on. At some point, I'm going to have to write my next book. And that's kind of a secret, no pun intended. That's a hidden or secondary reason that I'm messing around with this secret society stuff. Because maybe if it goes where I want it to go, I'll sort of do a more journalistic approach for the next book where I sort of talk about the process without revealing the secrets. I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure that'll be the book, but it could be. But I guess the thing I'm most deeply involved in and interested right now is, that cheesy phrase, the riches are in the niches.
Mm-hmm.
I always really struggled with getting there. I mean, we worked for a long time with consultants and, but we've always sort of taken on who could use us. But with this new program, I figured out who my favorite kind of client is and who we work best with. So we had 2 or 3 clients, the first one being a company called Pop-Up, that were venture-funded tech startups. And all 3 of the parts of that equation are important. So a lot of times startups, even funded startups, I've found are funded by the owners, a success that the owner had in another business, which can be a problem because a lot of times their model isn't as strong as they think it is, but they have the capital to keep it bolstered. They didn't have to convince a board or convince investors. A venture-funded startup is great because they have to have a really strong business model. They tend to be doers and risk takers, and they have a board that requires results, right? And they have a team. So, and they're the companies, the ones that are great, the ones that didn't fool somebody are really great. They're the ones that are changing the world, right? I mean, in the best of those companies, they're doing really new things. So, I worked with this company, Pop-Up, and we basically worked together for 6 months by design. And instead of creating a brand book, which is what startups usually do, they based totally on the imagination of the agency. They come up with logos and copywriting standards, colors, and then they never use them because it's based on very little. What we did was we used the hype strategies and we conducted very quick, rapid experiments to see what resonated with their audience. And the ones that won, we documented, and now they're using these standards. Their designers are using it, their marketing people are using it, the way they talk about it in interviews. So that was the company that launched this big conference. They completely came up with their contrarian point of view. So we've done 2 or 3 of those, and I just found out that they're my favorite companies to work with because they're the ones really putting those big ideas out there, and they work so hard and they make things happen. So I've started focusing almost entirely on working with those companies. That's become kind of my thing lately.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because I'd love to be able to do that. As the motto that the Lantern Group, my other business, has is, doing cool work with cool clients. And I was talking to Tim the other day. I'm going, I got a couple of clients that we're not doing cool work with them, and they're not cool clients, and yet they're paying the bills, and so we continue to work with them. And
everyone has that problem to an extent.
Yeah, right? I mean, it would be nice to get to a point where you can really just curate the clients that you have, particularly in if you want to grow to be a multinational, behemoth kind of huge organization, that's not going to do it. But, you can change the world and still have a limited impact from the business side of some of those factors and be able to choose. And I think that for me is something that I'm striving for. So
I think it's the gold standard, and I don't think that there's any business owner or entrepreneur who's being completely honest who hasn't at some point in their career worked with less than ideal clients for them. At the same time, though, if you can get closer and closer to crafting what you offer to appeal to those people, and you have to get comfortable with turning people away. But I think ultimately more money gets made, and that's where I'm focused. But it's hard. It's always hard.
Yeah,
it is hard saying no when you're kind of not sure where the next paycheck is coming from. You kind of go, is this going to be the last one? Because that's always, it's always down the road. So
I guess one trick that I've used to fool myself is to, and I'm not perfect at this, but is to structure my business in a way that I can't serve certain types of clients, right? So like right now, I'm just not doing all of that, handling social media, writing copy, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm good at a lot of that, especially the copywriting. That's how I started. But the reason I don't do it is manyfold, but one of them is that the real small solopreneur executive coach type clients who are beautiful people and do great work, if you have that kind of business, they will seek you out, they will try to get a deal, and they will treat you like an employee of the company. Right. And that's no harm, no foul, but that's what they will do. So if you have a model where, hey, we do this thing, we deliver more value this way, which we do, and you just won't bend, you can't work with the people you don't want to work with.
It's almost like a kill switch. It's almost like saying, here's a boundary, here's a guardrail, and we're just not going to go beyond that. And beyond that, it's just not going to be a business opportunity.
Did you ever see that? This is the last thing I'll say about this, but it just occurred to me. Did you ever see that movie with Michael Keaton about the McDonald's guy, Ray Kroc? He wasn't the founder, but he turned it into McDonald's basically. At a certain point, he walks into a McDonald's, a franchisee, and they were serving fried chicken. And he said to the people, "What are you serving fried chicken? I mean, you're not using our system." And they said, "But people around here like fried chicken. I mean, what do you mean we're not going to serve fried chicken?" 9 out of 10 people would have just said okay and continued to serve fried chicken because money was being made, and it was a real headache to create a structure to not allow for fried chicken to be sold or whatever. And what he cared so much about that system that this guy, he created a system where if they didn't do what he said, I think it was some kind of real estate deal. They didn't really, he owned the real estate, right. They owned the franchise. So I almost think you need to burn your boats in that way. You need to create a structure where you can't do it the other way. Maybe it's because you don't have the team to handle it, whatever it is, right? So I think it's hard to do, but if you can, that's how really good businesses get built, I think.
Mike, it's great to see you today. It's great to reconnect, and it's great to have you as a guest again on Behavioral Grooves. Thanks for joining us.
This is always one of my favorites. I love coming on here. So maybe one day you'll get a special golden ticket. Keep an eye out.
We'll wait for that day. Thank you.
Yeah. First, you got to give me your address.
Welcome to our grooving session where Tim and I groove on what we learned from our discussion with Michael, have a free-flowing conversation, although it might be a bit muted because it's kind of secret, and whatever else comes into our very secret brains.
Yeah.
We almost have to whisper on this whole episode, I think, because it's secret.
Whispering.
We can't let any of the secrets out.
Whispering.
This isn't an ASM. Is that what is that stuff?
Right.
Yeah,
exactly. That's what I was. Yeah. No, we don't have sexy female voices either, so it kind of doesn't work.
We don't have sexy voices in general. There you go.
Okay, but Secret Society, I love that Michael actually took something that he's kind of invested in which is the Hype book. I mean, and he's a hypester. He really is.
In the best term, he talks about hype as not being a bad thing, and it's not if you think about it in the way that he portrays it. So, yeah.
Right. And I love that about him, and that he's embraced that, and this idea of forming this secret society as just this tiny little nugget that comes in the first book. I think it's fantastic. And I like that he's doing it. I like that he's giving it a try.
And I like the success that he's had with it. He talks a little bit about that. I mean, obviously he kept a bunch of the stuff secret, but he talked about the success and kind of this element of being part of something and some of the unintended types of connections and ability to have those conversations that he talked about, I thought were really kind of cool. I did want to talk with you, though, a bit, because I don't think we really got into it a lot, is the psychology behind secret societies. Why they're alluring. What do they do from a psychological perspective? So one of the things I think that we could groove on is just the scarcity principle, Cialdini's principle of scarcity. And I think that is a apt kind of component when we think about secret societies.
I think that's maybe the central component of the secret society, is that it's not talked about. I've just heard a story this morning about watches made in Switzerland that cost $100,000. And they came out with this particular watchmaker came out with the watch during the middle of the pandemic, and they were really concerned that it might be a bad time to launch this $100,000 watch. But of course, guess what? Because of all the crypto billionaires and people who have made money in the market in the past few years, it became an instant success. They have a waiting list. They had a waiting list that was 12 years long.
Oh my gosh.
Because they make such a small number of these $100,000 watches.
Scarcity. Yeah.
It is all about scarcity. It's adored by the human condition. And I think Michael has created something here that when you say it's a secret society, instantly scarcity is the most prominent thing, and it makes it alluring, makes it interesting.
And you're only invited, you can't just join it. You have to be invited to join it. There's a bunch of those elements, that idea of exclusivity, the uniqueness of the group that you're going to be a part of.
Yeah, but what about self-identity? I mean, you have done a lot of work on self-identities and self-schemas. Is there an aspect of self-identity that plays into this idea of the secret society?
I think so. I mean, again, I haven't researched this part in particular, but think about it. If you have your identity is made up of a number of self-schemas and a kind of an overarching piece of who you are, and the self-schemas inform that larger picture. And if one of your schemas is I'm a member of this exclusive club that only allows, a select type of person in, depending upon what that secret society is, it has to play into your perception of your self-identity. And for some people, it could make up a large portion of that, depending upon how important that secret society is. If you go back and you think about when we think about secret societies, and we think about the Bone and Skull Club and different things within some of the, Ivy League colleges, and how exclusive and to be a part of that. You are now in this brotherhood, the Masons, you look at that. Those are pretty life altering type secret societies. And so that being part of one of those has to have a impact on who you are, the perception of who you are. Even if you can't put that out into the society as a whole, it's still there, and probably influences, your actions and decision making.
Well, and isn't it interesting? I found that part of the conversation when we turn to the secret societies within these very old Ivy League institutions and these colleges in the United States, that there's already a tremendous amount of exclusivity just getting in.
Yes.
Right. Just being a Harvard undergrad is, I think it's like, a 1 in 10,000 chance of even of those people who apply.
Of those apply, yeah.
So that if you applied, there's probably a good chance that you're pretty sharp. But to be one of this very exclusive group that gets in, and then once you're in, it's like, well, I'm just another Harvard undergrad. I want to go for the secret society. I want to figure out how to get in to even be even more exclusive within the exclusive group. So our brains naturally go to it. And I really like the idea that self-identities play to it. I also think that there is, and this also kind of plays along with the Ivy League school thing, this illusion of superiority, right? Which we know, since we've lived in Minnesota so long, the Lake Wobegon effect, Garrison Keillor's.
Or all the kids are above average, right?
Yeah. All the kids are above average, right? But there is this overestimation that we all have of our particularly the way that we look at ourselves in the mirror is that, well, we're pretty desirable relative to other people.
And being accepted or being asked to join a secret society just reinforces that.
It's completely reinforcing. It helps buoy up this idea that I really am a little bit better than everybody else because they want me to be a part of the secret society.
Right. And I think there's there's also this effort justification, although effort may not be the right term, but in the effort justification, that IKEA effect, anything that I've had to work for, different pieces of this. And I think, you're not necessarily working for, but those that get invited, you're trying to, what do they need? What am I doing to make sure that I get accepted into this kind of piece? That could be there. That's a weaker connection, granted, but
it's a little esoteric, but it actually kind of reminds me of some work that Ron Kivitz did on when he was looking at when do people indulge, and they are more willing to indulge after they put forth a lot of effort. And so being a part of a secret society, if it takes a lot of effort to get in, isn't the ultimate indulgence that you can't talk about, though.
Well, and I think part of the underlying mythology around these is also that secret societies have a power component to them. This idea that somehow you are connected to movers and shakers. And one of the things that Michael talked about is the ability to be, he's identified this within the group that he's formed, is that those connections that you make and the ability to have real conversations is something that's there. And I think that probably is there's some truth to that. This idea, not the power part, but the freedom, because it is secret and it is exclusive, and we know that this is the group that it is, that there is a element of openness that comes with that, and that openness can create long-lasting connections with other people and a variety of different pieces. And if those people happen to be in places of power, then you have an in to those places of power that you may not normally have. But if we're members of this secret society, even though maybe we're in different chapters, but I now have a access point into that is probably stronger than other access points could be.
So are we on our way to creating the Groove Society, the Sulcus Sinus, as we discovered?
Introducing the very exclusive Groove Society by invite only, but for a limited time. Listeners, if you are one of the first 5 to post to Twitter using the hashtag Groove Society and write, "I'm a groover, yes I am, I'm a groover, how about you?" you might get an invite into the secret society if you're one of the first 10 to do that. See, I'm making it secret and I'm giving an opportunity, but they have to work at it and they have to put it up. Isn't that great? I mean, should we do that?
My first thought is we got to work on your rhyme scheme with the "I'm a groover, yes I am, I'm a groover, how about you?" That's my first thought. So we can
so my rhyming, that's part of being in the secret Groove Society, is that we work on the rhyming things, and obviously I haven't been invited in yet, so I need that work.
Sulcus Sinus.
Sinus. There you go. What about that? So the last piece I just want to talk a little bit about here, Tim, is, so granted, we're not, we might have a secret society, and you'll know if you get invited, but if you don't, but
then you don't know.
But you don't know, but we may or may not. But this idea that businesses using this concept, right? This idea, a little bit more than just the scarcity, a little bit more than just this exclusivity, but can you have some sort of group that has a limited membership? And again, if you think about frequent flyer reward programs and you get up to the platinum or you get up to some of those others, and how do you differentiate those? And how do you create some of this desire to belong, to be part of that? I think it's an interesting concept that businesses can utilize in hopefully an ethical and positive way.
Rory Sutherland has always been a big proponent of tiering, having different tiers of status within loyalty programs. That I remember talking to him once about the idea of making sure that the boss sits in first class when you get on an airplane, so that there's this sense of there is a privilege, there are certain benefits that go along with being, in that group of leadership. That you get to actually sit in first class when you travel across the pond, rather than having to, sit back with the swill and, sweat.
But does that go against some of the egalitarian components?
Totally.
Of that?
I think it does.
So
I think it does. I think that there's real challenges in our world today not to sound too, politically correct, but it certainly raises questions about how do we want to treat other people? How do we want to be treated? But the thing is, it works. Exclusivity, self-identity issues, scarcity, we are automatically drawn to those things.
And I guess if you can set those up in a manner that isn't biased about, the type of people that get in, but that it offers some of those rewards, some of the perceived psychological rewards of that could be very cool. So,
well, there's the perception of it too. I've seen some television ads in the United States for an insurance company, or excuse me, it's a mobile wireless company, and they have a celebrity, a well-known celebrity, a sports star or actor or someone that's famous and recognizable, saying, "Hey, I'm really glad that I'm getting this deal, and I'm glad you got this deal for me." Excuse me, it is insurance, and so I'm going back and forth and playing different ads in my head, but it is insurance, and the guy who's the insurance guy says, "This isn't just you. Actually, this is available to everybody." He's like, "No. I know that you cut me this sweet deal because I'm me." And the insurance guys, "No, actually, everybody is available. It's available to everybody." But so I think they're doing a very clever job of implying that there's some exclusivity because this is only available, the actor or
the Aaron Rodgers of the world. There you go.
Yeah,
yes.
So to speak, right?
Yeah.
That there is this sense of exclusivity, but in reality, they're offering this to everyone. By doing so, I think that they indicate you as an average consumer can have something that this celebrity has. And that in and of itself is scarce.
You're part of the secret society along with that celebrity that gets these benefits that the insurance company is offering.
I think we could wrap up on that.
You think so? Well, with that, everybody, please try to get out and join our secret society by posting to Twitter, whatever it is that I said before, even though it didn't rhyme. And
hashtag Grooves Society.
Grooves Society. There you go. And please don't keep Behavioral Grooves a secret. Please share this program with your friends, with your family, with your colleagues. We find that the openness of Behavioral Grooves is one of its best qualities. And the more people that we can get to listen in and to learn and hopefully to take something from what we are doing here and apply it to their life or work to make it better, that's really what we're hoping for. And by, publicizing it and not keeping it secret is it pretty fantastic.
So Groovers, take these messages from Mike Schein, think about scarcity, think about exclusivity, think about the self-identity issues that you can apply in your own life. And hopefully this week you might be able to use them to help you go out and find your groove.